Does your family ever get exasperated with you for stockpiling such things as paper towels, bottled water, or toilet tissue? Well, they certainly can't object to you stockpiling money. Silver, the only money recognized by the U.S. Constitution, and your first 10-ounce bar of pure silver can be had at spot price with no premium by going to sdbullion.com/rp. And when you buy it that way, you'll be supporting Reluctant Preppers as well by going to sdbullion.com/rp. Thanks. This is a quick update to thank you for building our number of patrons to 76 and growing on patreon.com/reluctantpreppers. Soon, when we reach 100 active patrons, we're going to start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle each and every month to one active subscriber, so you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're delighted to have this guest with us tonight. Kenneth Ameduri is with CrushTheStreet.com. Kenneth, thank you for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I look forward to our vibrant conversation today.
Wanted to alert all our listeners that today is Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, and we're here to talk about artificial intelligence. We've had a couple of guests on our show in the past talking about some of the implications of AI, both the positive and potentially the concerning for people to make preparations. But the tagline of our channel is helping you to be aware and prepared. So if you could talk to us about some of the research and reading that you've been doing about artificial intelligence, maybe starting with where it is now and then taking us into what the implications are for the future, both to benefit everyone's individual lifestyle and also some of the considerations that could be considered as risks to employment and ways people might want to adapt their plans going forward.
Well, it really is a huge thing. And again, thanks for having me on the show today. AI is basically, it's simple. It's technology moving forward, but the implications are big. And I believe this is going to be one of the greatest jobs disruptors of our time going forward. And, we've seen this disruption in the past where we've had, manufacturing come in and, we have the machines in warehouses take over jobs and change landscapes forever. And I'll give you a little example. Back in the 1800s, 90% of the economy was agriculture. That they took 90% of the energy happening in the economy to produce the agriculture and the food we eat. Well, today, it's only 2% of GDP, 2% of the economy. And what that goes to show is we've become that much more efficient over time. And AI is going to continue to do this and take us to the next level. And the implications is because AI is getting extremely smart, they're starting to be able to really replicate a human brain in the way a human brain learns and can infer and make decisions, as opposed to just being pre-programmed. And I'll give you an example with AlphaGo's a robot. It was able to learn to play the game Go and beat the world's best player at this game. And this game is not an easy game, mind you. It's similar to checkers, but there's more combinations for how to play this game than there are atoms in the world. So if you consider what happened there was this machine was like a blank slate, and they had it play itself like 10 million times until it was superior to the best human player. And this has got a lot of big implications. It means that these AI robots can start entering into jobs and into arenas that were just not menial, low-skilled labor jobs. It's high-level, very important job-making decisions in our economy. And this is absolutely huge. I think people need to be aware about this. They need to be prepared for what is to come and just, be open to the idea that things can change faster now than at any other time in history.
We've talked with a couple other guests about this topic, and some examples that you just mentioned. In the past, it was always thought that robotics, for example, in industry, would be to do the most repetitive and boring tasks that needed precision and needed consistency, but that humans just couldn't stand to do. Or they could be dangerous, or they could be filthy jobs. But they were certainly jobs that didn't take a great amount of decision making. However, now, and we've all experienced this, like when you used to do research by going and calling a research librarian, and the librarian would look things up for you. And now we can all feel like we know everything that humans know by just Googling something right away, and feel like we have that kind of extra knowledge and extra power at our fingertips. But jobs that require that kind of knowledge and decision making, like medical doctors diagnosing illnesses based on a wide variety of mysterious symptoms, or lawyers determining through all their research which is the best precedent on this particular case or that case. Those jobs are now up for grabs, and we've certainly seen technology displace more routine jobs like travel agents. Now you can go to Google Flights, and you can usually beat a travel agent at finding the best price, that kind of thing. But as this, and offshoring was also a big threat during the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, but now I don't know what you call it when AI displaces entire new categories of careers. If it's not offshoring, what do they call it? Chip shoring or something like that. But what kinds of impacts? What kind of industries will we see impacted by AI?
Well, it's going to leak into all sorts of areas, and I think the companies that are anticipating this, people that are anticipating this, whether or not they're just interested in becoming some sort of engineer or scientist that's going to focus and contribute to this space. I mean, I think that's going to be absolutely huge. But let's just look at the number one job, the number one occupation in America right now, which is the driver. Now you got taxi drivers, Uber drivers, truck drivers, and tractor drivers. This is a job that we know is going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. This is already happening, but it just hasn't really kicked into gear yet. AI is still catching up. They're still trying to figure it out. And it's very consequential, too. I mean, putting an artificial robot behind the wheel of a car, I mean, this is life and death situation. You're going to put families in cars. You're going to potentially hit other families in the car. There's going to be lose-lose scenarios where you have a potential to hit someone crossing the road or driving off the road and hitting people. So, this is going to come, but there's a lot of optimism about what this will bring about. Elon Musk, for instance, thinks that there's going to be a 10x reduction in the amount of accidents on the road. So you got to think about how positive is that going to be for our major U.S. cities when all of a sudden there's not an accident every time you get on the road, because it's now safer and everyone is being driven around by AI.
Unless you're a hospital administrator who's in charge of the emergency room, in which case it's a huge threat to one of your biggest traffic sources into your business.
That's also true. And, that brings up another point. You brought up the medical industry. If all of a sudden now people get chipped, which is highly controversial, and now they're monitoring our health, like for brain cancer and our hearts on a very real-time basis, people might start living longer, and they may not die out of nowhere. I mean, I know someone just a week ago who had a heart attack. He was 62 years old, and maybe it was possible that if they had some sort of instantaneous real-time monitoring of him, he'd still be here. So there's a lot of implications, and I think there's a lot of industries that are going to be disrupted by AI. But the real thing that's happening is that AI is going into very consequential and high-level decisions. I mean, we're talking about autonomous drones now. What happens when the government and the military starts giving AI the trigger, the decision to pull the trigger and to take someone else's life? And we know this possibility is coming, but the balance between morality and efficiency, how do you program that into a machine, an AI robot. We as humans, we balance these things. What's good for society, efficiency, but also what is moral, and how do we balance those things? And that is the big question for how AI is going to move forward, especially as it continues to advance. And something you brought up now is the difference between, the 21st century and times past, and that is the invention of the internet. Humans have access to all historical human data to the beginning of time with a simple internet connection. You can drive up to McDonald's. You don't even have to pay for internet anymore to access anything you want. But the difference between a human and an artificial intelligent robot is that a robot can update instantly. A human can only absorb so much information. A robot can instantly update. And if you consider that all robots are learning at the same time and connected by this thing called the internet, how quickly can these robots advance so much faster than humans? And, someone even put it and described AI as a new species that humans will have to deal with. And I had to scratch my head at that. But if you really consider robots just getting so incredibly smart and outpacing humans, it might really actually be like dealing with a brand new species like we've never seen before.
And you mentioned the idea of not having to wait till your health fails to find out that you need help. In industry, where I have some experience in engineering and in manufacturing, they talk about, not just talk about, they're employing predictive analytics to where rather than waiting for any kind of electronic or mechanical system to fail before you actually see the consequences playing out that have negative business consequences, you look at all kinds of data, near real-time streams of data, and they do pattern matching and predictive analytics to say, it looks like now we got a 95% probability that in the next one work shift or 1 week or whatever, that this bearing or pump or fail or robot or whatever is going to fail, and so they can do preventative maintenance and avoid a very costly disruption by changing out those things in advance. It does change the tide when you start talking about humans being those systems that are being monitored and measured. A lot of adherents to our channel are fiercely wanting to guard their privacy, their freedom, their liberty, their individuality, and the idea of being continuously internally monitored can be a very chilling thought to many people. I know as simple as thing as a sports tracker. My wife, I had given her a Fitbit for a recent Christmas gift, and it had malfunctioned, the band broke or whatever, and I called up the company to talk to their customer service, and the guy brought up her account and said, he was talking to me about what hours she sleeps and how restful her sleep is and that kind of stuff, and I thought, this is creepy. We just bought this so that my wife could have a goal and get more fitness exercise, that kind of thing, and here this complete stranger on the other side of the world is essentially watching her every move. So if you could just address for one moment that aspect of what happens to any concept, any semblance of remaining, even if you want to opt out of the system, to maintain any sense of personal privacy or personal liberty?
Well, I don't have any specific suggestion for people. I think you need to kind of look at what is going on and decide where you want to be on this. I mean, there's people who, we visited a group here in Texas who really live off the grid. They're almost like an Amish community because they don't want any part of the new technology and to be influenced by the current 21st century agendas. But at the same time, it's about staying up with the trends and staying relevant, because so many businesses out there, if they don't stay efficient, because that's what a lot of this is. It's not any sort of attempt to be AI. It's attempts to be more and more efficient, like you're talking about, predicting things and catching mistakes. And it's just one step in front of the other. And so it's a balance of staying in front of those trends and deciding where you want to be. But you're right. It's a sacrifice of privacy for convenience in so many situations. I mean, we're walking around with our phones now, our smartphones. They know how many times we check our phones every day, what we're receiving by email, everything we're a part of. How many times we go to the bathroom probably, because it knows where we walk around and what we're doing, and when we leave our house, when we come back home, if we turn on our alarm system or if we turn it off. I mean, so many things are just being listened to right now. We got one of those, Google Homes right behind me. I know a lot of people are probably cringing that I would have one of these in my house. But again, I understand that so much of my privacy is being lost just by being plugged into the system. But it's something everyone is going to need to decide for themselves on how much they want to be plugged in. And I can tell you, chipping is coming. This is something that's going to be coming. Credit cards, right in your body. All this information. If you want to have your medical records and you walk into a doctor's office and just download your files. I mean, it'll be right there on you. And that's a highly controversial thing, especially for those who, have Christian backgrounds. They know what that potentially means. And it's a problem when you look into a lot of these things. But at the same time, it's going to be sold as, what, do you really want to carry your cards? Do you want to lose your cash? Do you want to be stolen from? I mean, imagine that. You can really mitigate a lot of these things. And the argument is there why your life might be better, but at a complete loss of privacy. So I don't have any specific suggestion for people other than the fact that we're talking about it. That way people understand, what is coming down the horizon, and to just, meditate on this and to consider, how you want to approach it. And, another good implication of having these conversations is if it is getting so out of control, it's important that people know about this so we can, get together and, talk about it and say, hey, this is not good. Let's do something about it. So I believe that's important as well.
You're absolutely right about something you said really rang a bell for me when you said it's promoted in the name of being able to have more control over your life and to avoid the potential for losing things. I remember that's the way American Express used to say, hey, don't take cash with you, take American Express because if they get lost, you can get replaced or whatever. So, but if you think about it a few steps farther for most people, it's like, wait a minute, if, like you talked about this, the continual monitoring for health conditions, if I am deemed by the system that's monitoring everybody and everything and all my vital to be no longer, if I now am seen as part of the predicted problem, and that could be because of my speech too. I mean, we're having a conversation right now, and that's what you were just acknowledging that, hey, the value of this conversation, but this conversation being continually monitored and streamed, that kind of thing, could be deemed a problem. And if we say people could take your cash, well, how about just the off switch to your ability to communicate, or even I was thinking about your ability to, you mentioned cashless society, and the off switch on your ability to transact. So all of a sudden, if certain rules are met, certain community guidelines, I'm trying to not get too close to what people may already have been hearing about either on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or those things. But if you get to breaking the rules as they're being defined by those who are defining them, you can have your ability to communicate by the First Amendment or to transact and freedom of commerce and all those things can just be shut off at a moment's notice.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. One thing I would say though is that I'm optimistic that the need for individual sovereignty is going to be reason enough for enough people to create infrastructures that do provide that autonomy for each one of us and that freedom. Even like what you're talking about, a lot of the content right now being on YouTube, there's a lot of other platforms that are coming around to answer that problem and say, hey, you know what, we're not going to, censor our information, or it's going to be decentralized. And there's a lot of even cryptocurrency projects that are out there that are trying to solve that problem as well. And the internet is a decentralized platform that really provides a lot of amazing avenues for that freedom. And again, it's really about people discussing these things and creating social pressures for society to act in a positive way. You can even look at civil rights movements in the past with women or with African Americans. Having these conversations has changed the way people act in society and treat people over the years. So I believe in people's ability to get together, discuss, and share their concerns to encourage society to act in a way that is just for everybody.
That's a good point. If people aren't familiar with it, look up GDPR. It just went into effect legally this May for all businesses worldwide, including in the U.S. Anyone who does business with the EU, basically. So the European Union passed a general data privacy requirement saying that any systems that gather data on individuals, EU citizens specifically, have to meet all kinds of requirements in terms of being able to be transparent with those individuals about what data they do have on them, being willing to correct it, being willing to edit it or expunge it, that kind of thing. So there are some examples, like you're pointing out, of where people are standing up and saying, wait a minute, we do have sovereignty and we do have rights. If I could turn a question to a little bit different approach, and that is the psychological and emotional needs of humans to be needed and to have a purpose and to have, it may be different sometimes for men and women, but certainly that for humans that need to be needed. And when entire classes of careers are obsoleted, and we've already seen, thanks to widespread abortion usage, especially in China and other countries, that we have an overabundance of males already in the population. But when you have this, A, overabundance of males, B, the potential of economic changes coming ahead, and C, this idea of entire classes of economic careers being displaced, what do you do with all the people who no longer have that sense of needing to be needed because AI can do it better than we can as humans? What does that do to us psychologically?
Let me answer that from just what the concerns would be. A guy like George Soros will say, well, as it is, the world only needs 300,000 people, and we're way overpopulated. We're over-consuming for future generations down the line, tens of thousands of years, and we're destroying our planet. And if you consider that we're going to go into a phase where massive amounts of sectors might become displaced, they might even have more of a reason to feel like there's a lot of meaningless people in this world that aren't serving a purpose. But one thing I would say is that I'm optimistic that AI isn't going to just be a job killer, but more of a job displacer, and new opportunities are going to arise. And that's something that I think people should be open to and be nimble about, because if you're nimble, you can kind of maneuver and use AI and be a part of it and not just be destroyed by it. And, in one example I've given a few times is look at Airbnb. This is a company that uses AI every single day. There's 5 million listings at any one given point, and 300,000 to 300,000 leases that happen a day. Airbnb, with the use of AI, has made travel more affordable for people who want to travel, and is now offering an opportunity for people who would have never have rented their home out or rented a room out or made money in this to now start making money. So it's a really exciting thing to consider that this could start happening in many different sectors. And like I said about the driving the cars, is all of a sudden now we have economies in these major metropolitan cities that don't have as many accidents. So that'll loosen up the economies for your plumbers and your HVAC people, and people can now drive further to work because it's not taking an hour to drive 20 miles anymore. It takes only 20 minutes. So there's a lot of positives that I believe are going to come. And, we don't know what we don't know. When cars came online to a very, very large degree, nobody was thinking that hotels and travel was going to boom. I mean, hotels and motels across the U.S. absolutely exploded because now we have cars, and cars opened up this opportunity to, have hotels and motels and people traveling. And who was thinking about drive-throughs? Fast food, when cars were invented, absolutely boomed. And people were now able to go to, McDonald's and In-N-Out and all of these different fast food places because of cars. And so I'm not saying that I know exactly what's going to be formed with this new technology, but I'm optimistic there's going to be a lot of new sectors that we haven't even considered yet because of AI. And this is something, again, should be reason to be optimistic, but also reasons to be thinking, where is this going and how can I be aligned with it so I don't get ran over by it?
If people want to find out more about your research and potentially some opportunities that they should be thinking about as far as their future, whether it's financial or career or otherwise lifestyle, is there any other resources you provide at Crush the Street that they might need to be aware of?
Yes, thanks for that. If people want to get more information on this, I highly recommend people to go to crushthestreet.com/AI to download a report. We talk about some of these things, and we really try to plant some seeds into people's minds that encourage, more thinking and to be prepared. So again, Dunnigan, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
We've been speaking with Kenneth Ameduri, founder at crushthestreet.com, talking about the implications of AI on our future so that we can be aware and prepared and make intentional choices about what's coming. Kenneth, thank you for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you, Dunnigan.